All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to our monthly FEDSA talk. It's myself and Schalk here today. I'm just going to do a quick introduction, thank our sponsors, and then we'll get right into it. Yeah, so if this is your first time, we are Front-End Engineering and Design South Africa, or FEDSA, and we've been bringing you meetups and so on for many, many years now. Okay, so we have a few sponsors who help us to bring these events to you. That's KRS, who've been a sponsor of ours for the last year or so, and they sponsor our bi-monthly newsletter. We'll share the link for that. You can sign up if you want. It's where we share interesting things happening in the front-end and design world. And then we have two long-standing sponsors who've been with us for many, many years. That is NML and IO, both software development companies in Cape Town. Okay, you should follow Schalk if you don't on LinkedIn. He's our speaker for tonight. I'll pop all these relevant links in the chat for everyone. And then post-talk, just post your comments in YouTube and LinkedIn Live if you're watching there, and we'll tackle them at the end. Join our newsletter, as I mentioned. We post jobs, industry news, and more. Link in the comments. And if you want to do a talk, you can volunteer to do that. We're always looking for people. If you have a topic in mind that you'd like to do, feel free to DM any one of Liesel, myself, Schalk, or Yosha on via LinkedIn. And if you're on our Discord, you can do that there as well. Okay, then we have a JetBrains giveaway. JetBrains have very kindly given us some coupons for their software products. I'm sure you're familiar with them, WebStorm and Brider and so on and so on. So we've got some coupons to give away, and we're going to give those to who we think asks the best questions in our YouTube and LinkedIn Live, and we will announce those within the next couple of days. So if you have questions, please post them. A little extra incentive there to be part of the conversation. Okay, so I'm sure you all know, because you're here, that today Schalk is going to be talking about local first with Tanstack DB. And we're going to do a slightly different format today. Instead of just a talk and demos and so on, it's going to be more of a Q&A format. And really just Schalk giving us his thoughts on local first, and delving a little bit into Tanstack DB, what it is, and what you can use it for. Okay, so most of the time you're just going to see the two of us, and Schalk will share some things as we go along. Right, so thanks, Schalk. Great topic and topical. I'm sure everyone who's watching is aware of all the cloud outages and things we had towards the end of 2025, and that was something you actually put in your talk description. In your opinion, do these things speak to like a cloud concentration risk? We have a single cloud provider, and how does that lead us into maybe talking about local first?
Cool. All right. So let me draw some pictures.
Okay,
you may want to share my screen.
That's why we're here. There you go.
Okay, so a couple of things. So I assume you can hear me all right. So yes, and I think like before we dive into that, I just want to make kind of like a note here, and we can return to this. So this concept of local first means something very specific, and it was initially coined by a couple of gentlemen under Ink and Switch. So they kind of wrote a research paper in 2019 where they kind of explored this idea they had about something called local first. And then I'll maybe dive into that a bit, because I do think there's a danger here that we tend to see in the world of software, whether it's things like serverless, agile, whatever, where concepts get diluted, and people just start using them like to describe things that where it can kind of mean everything and nothing at the same time. So I think it's just worth like actually zeroing in on what exactly is local first, like capital L. So also just want to preface by saying, like, we've had him on before. Friend of the show. Maxi wrote a really great article on. I kind of see this as kind of like the authoritative tutorial or whatever on Tanstack. So I don't necessarily want to go into too much in terms of kind of just technically how do you use Tanstack. I'll talk about some code examples I prepared, but I think there's a lot of discourse and a lot of discussion that I think is more useful in terms of patterns and approaches and so forth. So for the kind of actual implementation level stuff, the lower level, what is Tanstack? Check out his, maybe if you can share that in the chat as well, check out his article. He does it way better than I will. Yeah. Okay. Then yes. Okay. So back to your question. So it's tricky because I kind of, so what was it, in 2 months we saw 4 cloud outages.
Yes, we did,
I think. And so it's tricky, it's kind of a bit of a double-edged sword by leading with that, because to some degree it's a nice touch point, in terms of my own kind of exploration into local first and so forth. But I think there's also a danger in terms of, and this is the danger I often find, is that of overemphasize, what would be the word, conflating local first and offline first.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, that was going to be one of my follow-up questions: is how do we? What is the difference, and why? It's easy to conflate them.
Yes.
And
yes.
Yeah.
And this is the thing when you talk, what I often find is when you talk about stuff like local first and so forth, people immediately jump to, okay, how would you build software without a server? And I think this is something. I think this is a very critical point, and maybe I can dive into that and then kind of lean a bit back into the outages and so forth. So I've read this paper several times. It's a really great paper, and I obviously have some notes. But there's a specific quote here that I want to quickly just bring up. I think they frame it really well here, that the key difference between traditional systems and local first systems is not an absence of service, but a change in their responsibility. They are supporting role, not the source of truth. And so, okay, so this kind of I think this is a kind of a good entry point. So, there's, go ahead, Justin.
No.
What was it that 8 sleeps, bed, AWS outage? I think that is kind of the the starting point. I think these images are amazing. Smart bed gone rogue. But yeah, so,
overheating. And
yes, and I know that Theo also kind of tweeted something or whatever. But so anyway, so the point being, people meme about that, quite hard and so forth, and rightfully so. And the immediate question is, okay, why do you need a cloud provider for your smart bed? I can think of a couple of reasons. It's actually, I don't think it's that far-fetched, So I think there are cases for data backup, controlling it from your phone and whatever. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing, and I think this is specifically what I want to highlight. It's the fact that is the connection to the cloud is the central hinge on which everything in your app runs. And once you get into the world of IoT, a lot of these examples become really bizarre.
Yes.
I should find this LinkedIn post as well. I think I'm going to kind of say the wrong person now. I have to say who I think it was, but someone that I know kind of shared something about. There was also an outage about like if you have a specific mouse or whatever, maybe a couple of months ago, where they messed up their DNS certificates for their servers, and like the mouse just didn't work. And the irony of that being that, you know, like if I were to like actually draw it out is, and I think this is like, I think a very good example where you have all this logic, like, and I think that's a good example where, you know, when you're talking, like thinking about like something like a computer mouse or whatever, it's not like the logic runs on the, I can't imagine the logic actually runs on the cloud and then, you know, talks to the client. You'd probably get some intense latency, I would imagine, if you move your mouse cursor. But my guess is it probably just does some basic stuff in terms of like user profile stuff. So, you know, like you can maybe just, let's say you can log in, and, you know, and like you kind of your user preferences are kind of somewhere on AWS or whatever, and it kind of just like keeps that in sync. And then if you have this mouse with another device as well, then, you know, like it keeps those settings in sync and whatever. So, you know, if I adjust the sensitivity here, it doesn't calculate the sensitivity like on the server and send it back. It just keeps that sensitivity then in sync or whatever. I'm working on a lot of assumptions here, but I think this is a really good example where there's actually probably something that's an enhancement. And it would probably be pretty trivial, like still having it work without that. There's no reason why that needs to be part of your core business logic. But it's just like the way that it's been architected where, you know, if this little piece, like you get a, here's actually a very topical, like a topical example. I didn't actually plan for this, but so this morning, the admissions for schools in the Western Cape opened. And so on the actual, it's a classic .NET site. And so we needed to submit 3 schools of your choice, and then like the Western Cape Department of Education, like kind of assigns your child or whatever. Their drop down, so that they have the classic thing where you select a city, a general greater area, and then it gives you, and then it conditionally loads like the suburbs.
Yeah.
And that thing was broken.
Right.
Likely because the admissions opened this morning and it just got flooded, and the .NET server just got absolutely demolished. It's the exact same thing where you just have this little piece of functionality where that's kind of like bringing your entire app to, like your entire piece of software to a halt, because you're fetching that live from the server every time. And I think this is a good example where, once again, like maybe just having that one piece of widget, you can still have the data on the server, but, you know, like just have it use stale data. I mean, like how often do suburbs change? But they might change, and then just refresh it in the background every time. And then people can like do this, fill in the submission, get it, like save it or whatever without this specific piece of functionality kind of stopping everyone from submitting. And so like all of this is not really anything new, you know, like if you've been doing a lot of React query work, you know, like this is, you can kind of do persistence, you know, even with index DB, with local storage, and so forth, and, you know, do background fetching and so forth. So I think for a lot of people, we've kind of been using some type of local first pattern already with stuff like, you know, React query. I don't know if you guys use React query, Justin.
Yes, we do.
Do you guys do any type of stale, like you know, like really long stale times and stuff, or not really?
Not really, no.
But I do think
we tend to go.
Sorry, go ahead.
You have a link to the government website.
Well, it says you can just WCED admissions. It's
Right.
look at this beautiful .NET website. And they say don't wait, but then like the server falls over on the first day. But yeah.
Get in straight away. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. No. Carry on, Schalk.
And I think like the reason why I asked, So the reason why I asked this because like in a lot of products we've been working on, we've been like putting stuff in IDB from React Query and so forth for similar type of like effects. Let's say you're using something like Slack or whatever, or let me just quickly open up Discord I'm just sharing the window, but whatever. But so for example, let's say you have Slack or Discord, and then you have like all your workspaces here on the side. Like you probably want to like persist this between reloads. You probably don't want a fresh like DB. So this type of thing you probably give like a very long stale time. So reload. Like it just assumes unless you tell it to invalidate. So you're already doing some type of local first. And this is the key. Like it's not about service. It's about prioritizing like local when you can over. So you start a conversation with, can this be handled locally? Can this logic live locally? And then like, if not, to what degree? So that's your starting point instead. And I think like it's similar to mobile first. So, like I think, Justin, you and I have been around long enough that I remember actually, probably 10 years ago, like I was legit having conversations like, should we build a responsive website? Or should we do an M dot whatever? And I remember like trying to really push this idea of a responsive website, and people weren't keen on it. Because that was in the e-commerce space as well. And I think it's kind of like the same here as well, is that so it's the same premise as mobile first, where it's not mobile only. So but like the thing is, you start your conversation with, can this be local? If not, and then you gradually work your way there, figuring out, okay, what are the limitations? And maybe you're building a banking app or whatever, and nothing can be local. Like I don't really think, and this is probably a question you prepared as well, is that if you're doing like if your APSA or whatever, or Standard Bank or whatever, I don't really think you want to be doing any local stuff. Everything is like I don't even think they persist cookies or anything. Like your session, like if you close that tab, you're gone.
You're gone. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yes,
yeah. That was a question I had. It's like, when is this not appropriate? And something like that kind of highly sensitive data is very.
And it's the same. We have the same with like mobile first, where people are like, okay, cool, this responsive design thing is cool and all, but like, how are you going to use Google Docs, like on your phone, or how are you going to use a spreadsheet? But like the kind of the point is, it's a spectrum, and it's a reorientation of where you start thinking. It's not dictating like kind of limitations. It's saying that it's easier to take something that can be stored locally, and then as needed, actually rely on the server more and more and more, either because of scale, because sometimes the scale of things get too big and you need to rely on the server, or just because for whatever other reason. Okay, so let me just summarize a couple of quick things in terms of kind of some of the key things they mentioned here in this research paper. And I think it's also worth mentioning, so Peter, he actually, I think he was CTO at Heroku, if I'm not mistaken. And he has a really phenomenal DevTools podcast, Peter Auto Merge, where he like maybe you can link this video, the stop video as well. It's really great, and he actually, so he's one of the authors of this paper, and he kind of talks about like one big thing that really prompted him to explore this idea of local first is that because he was at Heroku, and so Heroku was go-to, like like instant deploy your stuff to the cloud.
Yes.
A long time, and then they changed their pricing and whatever. And I think one thing that he noted is that he just saw like all this data, all these apps, just disappear. Like I think he mentioned there was like some recipe app or something that he was using, and obviously after the changes at Heroku, like all of that shut down, and he just encountered like apps as a user, like where it's just like gone now because it was deployed to Heroku and now the server's down. And like so he kind of jokes about like kind of to atone for his sins, he kind of explored like a way of kind of owning your data, owning your software. And I don't want to go into this too much. A big part of this paper is about like this idea of data ownership, which I like, and specifically looking at CRDTs as a way to achieve data ownership, while also leaning into all the benefits that we get from servers and stuff. But it's interesting, like that he also talks about a concept called, like, I don't think he coined it. Let me just see if I can find it anywhere. I don't think he coined it. Oh yeah. So someone called this concept of the digital dark age, where we were in kind of like this period where we had like all our data local, Microsoft Word or whatever. I still have like my Word documents like on my hard drive, like from like decades ago.
Yeah. Yes.
Then we got this big shift into software as a service and kind of like cloud-based stuff. And like like in terms of, and then those things eventually, as the server shut down or people don't maintain it anymore or whatever, or the company is under, you just lose all of that. So it's interesting. So there's this concept of, in terms of our information history, like there's if you were to look back on it, there's going to be like this dark age where like information just, you can't access it anymore. Whereas everything up until then, you could, whether it be through like an emulator or a virtual box or whatever. You might need to spin up Windows 3.1, but like you could still access it. And I think that's So this paper is very much kind of like exploring that concept, which like is a concern of mine, but it's not my primary reason for like kind of exploring local first. And I'll talk about that in a second. But let me also just give a very brief overview of what Tanstack DB is. Okay, so first and foremost, like Tanstack DB is, I think, fair warning, it is still in beta. So that means like it's stable, it's you can use it, but it does mean that the API might still change. There was a big change in 0.5 and so forth. But so effectively, what Tanstack DB is, and I think this is where I got it wrong initially when I started exploring Tanstack DB, is Tanstack DB by itself does not really give you that much. I think the big thing that it gives you is incremental diffing. So this is something that's unique to Tanstack DB, is that you'll see, so you write your queries like almost like SQL-esque queries, so from, where, select, or whatever. And I'll show you guys in a second. Now, let me show you in the example code that I'm going to show an example of it later. Let me just, if I can find it, just show you kind of like how one of these queries look. And so what it does, it does incremental diffing. So it uses under the hood. Let me just see. Do they mention it here? Can't remember. There's some specific tool that it uses. Okay, I can't find it now. It'll be in here, but effectively, so geez, let me just share my entire screen. I'm sharing my code now. But, sorry, just give me a second. I just want to share my entire window. That will help. Okay,
there we go.
Let me zoom in quite a bit. So here's an example of, for example, a query. Okay, so cool. So I do a light. So this is a React app. Okay, and so
Schalk,
yes.
sorry, can you just give a quick what is use live query?
So okay, so effectively. You have, there might be like a bit of a curse of knowledge here because I've been in this space for so long and I've used a lot of other tools like Dexy and so forth.
Okay.
Is it, okay, wait, it just shared the window again. Sorry, guys. Let me just share the entire screen. There we go. Okay, so, okay. Let me try and sketch this out. So, okay, so you sketch out the actual app that I built, the demo that I built. Okay, so you have collections, okay? And you can think about collections kind of like almost like tables in a traditional DB. And so in mine, no surprises, it's a to-do app. So you have tasks and you have categories, you have status, you have members, you have projects. What else was it? Oh, and you have teams. Okay, so these are all. So if we were to look at, let me just see. I see you got rid of the AI startup guy looking for money.
He's banned.
There you go. Not getting any money from us for your AI startup. Shame. It was like just a legit question.
Definitely wasn't.
Probably a bot. Okay, so there's actually, FYI, there's a button you can press on your side somewhere where it actually shows the text chat like on the actual video itself. If you want to do that. Yeah, cool. So just if anyone's watching this video afterwards, just see the text chat. All right. So and so these generally, so you have XOD schemas for them. So you know, like let's look at a task. So a task has a label, a status, a team, category, who it's assigned to, what projects it's assigned to, created, updated, owner. So these are kind of like columns in a database.
Yeah.
And like, and a key thing here, and I think like this is where Tanstack DB like really shines, is like I'm assuming because like this is where previously on projects that I've worked with, where we started seriously looking at some local first solutions because like we were just like killing the server and it was like spinners just everywhere. It really shines when you have a lot of relational data that's small bits of relational data that, so you know, like, so you might have 5 statuses that someone can select, you might have 10 categories, you might have 9 members, you might have 10 projects that it's divided between, you might have 3 teams, but all of these are extremely kind of like referential to one another, and most of them you can mutate. So like, you know, like, so this starts with the assumption, so instead of hard coding, you know, like pending, completed, or whatever, you know, like this app is built that you can actually set your own statuses, give them colors, you can set your own categories, give them icons, and so forth and so forth. So you can directly mutate, and then obviously, so then that should like reflect. So if I go and I change the color, let's say there's a status in my thing called, you know, completed or whatever, and I change the color from completed from blue to, you know, red or whatever, then like that should instantly propagate on my client side everywhere. And like all that it should do is it should just do a post request, or this would be a patch to the server, which says change it from blue to red. So in terms of what's actually happening here, like it's trivial, like so if you just like update it in the collection in Tanstack DB, all your queries and stuff that rely on it will instantly update, and it just sends up like this little patch. If you were to do this in like kind of like monkey patching this type of thing with React query, it's like this is, man, like this is a lot of like changing all this optimistic stuff, and this is where, and I think this is the specific problem that Tanstack DB actually solves, is that if you go far enough, and like so you do your optimistic update, so you're like, okay, like to do app, you add a to do, and it shows up while it's resolving with the server, and then it just confirms it, and it's now set. And it just optimistically shows them as you add them without waiting on the server to respond. That's very simple. You just go in your React query kind of like data, and you just like like set that, and then you start maybe getting statuses, and it's like, cool, you change the status. Now you need to make sure that it automatically updates like on all the like actual related tasks and so forth. So like eventually, like you are just like getting into this spaghetti ball of zero sync. A good question, Sean. Also, hey Sean, I'll chat about zero and all these things as well in a second. So you get into the spaghetti ball of managing optimistic things and like whatever, and it becomes really brittle. And I think that's what Tanstack DB is built for. So I would probably, if I'm going to lean into something that does a lot of optimistic updates and stuff, then like I would probably just go Tanstack DB straight and leave the React query part. I think they also have an example where they kind of show, and I'll come back to like what are live queries and things in a second. I think they have an example where they show, because they do have an adapter actually for React query, where you can actually just plug it into your React query. I think it's over here. Where would it be? Let's see. They have an example where I can't find it now. Like real talk, like the docs are not great.
No, they aren't. I'm going to post a link to them anyway. But yeah,
but it's but like I think that counts with the territory of being beta. Like you don't want to write really good documentation, and then the docs are correct, but it's not very. It doesn't explain the concepts in a nice way, and it's hard to find stuff. But I think it's if you go on mutations. Yes, cool. So here it shows, cool, like if you doing the same thing with Tanstack query with manual optimistic updating, like this is what you would do. Whereas, on like this is what you would do with, so I think this is a good example. So let's say here you have a collection, it's to-dos, that's a schema. So it's so you have a schema of the objects. In other words, it's an array of, like all of them share the same shape. And then what is the unique identifier of each? Let me just zoom in a bit here. And then how do you fetch them? Okay, and then you can set like side effects, like when you insert something, do this. When you delete something, do this. Like this is when you need to send stuff up to the actual server. So effectively, this is all you do. So you just like insert, remove, update, whatever, and the collection itself handles whatever needs to happen.
Yeah.
So whereas, like when you're using React Tanstack query, a lot of that logic leaks into your actual UI. And this is really great if you're working with like a team, because then like, whoever's like people can just use these commands like in the UI or whatever, they're like, okay, cool, insert a to-do app, to-do task or whatever, and like the collection itself handles all the underlying logic. Okay, so so I think like this is kind of like the concept of collections, but then like in terms of live queries, a live query is effectively just like I'll maybe type one out, an example here. So a live query is just a way to subscribe to data. So you can think about it as a SQL query, but a reactive one. So if I were to do Tanstack, and you will see there's a Tanstack, there's like a core DB, or I think it's just the straight DB one. I think initially I was like, what's the difference? And then there's a React one as well. And and both of them have like live query or whatever. And once again, the docs aren't that great in terms of explaining some of the stuff. But initially, like I figured out that all that this is, or I read it in the doc somewhere, is like this is exactly the same as this, just with some extra React like quality of life stuff that's exported as well. So for a very long time, I used to import both of these, thinking that okay, I need the core and then the React like kind of adapter. But you actually just need the React one if you're using React or whatever, Vue or whatever. Okay, so you have a live query, and then you actually, so you have then, like let's just say, here's my tasks. So create collection. Okay, let's just say I have then my statuses. Okay, obviously, just use your imagination. Like, obviously, you can't just pass an empty object to it, but let's just say members, okay? So this is like you would create the collections then. Okay, then what I can do is I can basically query it as if it's SQL tables, and I can do joins. I can do lots of cool stuff. So I can go, let's say, here's my app example. Return, let's just say div 1, 2, 3 for now. And then, okay. And so this has kind of like all the same stuff that you get with like React query. There's like a data, there's like a is loading, all of that stuff. So then I do my use live query. Okay, and that takes basically a callback. Okay, and that callback gives you one argument called Q. Okay, and that you do Q dot, and then you start writing your logic. So you do Q dot. So first things first, from. So I need to give it where to start. So let's say let's start on tasks. Okay, and you can give it an alias. I usually just call it like X. Like one thing you'll notice that I tend to not use very long variable names when I'm working in like a very local scope. So I'm just working this little space here or whatever. So some people might just keep it tasks or whatever. I just kind of do like X or whatever. Right, and then I change some other stuff onto it. So okay, so from. Okay, and then I'm like, okay, cool. What I want is I want where, let me just grab X, and you might be asking like, okay, but why don't you just do a regular JavaScript filter or a regular JavaScript sort or whatever? And I'm going to talk about that now in a second. And then there's also like all the classic stuff, so like equal, like, greater than, all that stuff. So then I do where equal, and I say where X. Let's say, let's look for a task where the let's just see. Let's say we have kind of like logged in user ID or whatever here. Okay, and that corresponds with kind of like the member ID. So let's just say, so let's get all the tasks associated with kind of the person that's logged in. So X, so that would be X, let's just say assigned and logged in user ID. Okay, cool. So we just do a where on that. Okay. And then we can do other things. So we can now start, like, if we want, we can do additional wheres. Let's actually do, let's say we have a, like a search or whatever you state. Okay. And let's just say here that we want to also do, once we've found all the ones that kind of match the signed-in user, then we can maybe just do, let's do a case insensitive. We can just do, X, let's just say against the label, and then this would just be like kind of the search, okay? And then we can do some joins. So one thing, if you want to, so like it kind of, you compose your stuff with kind of like all these functions it gives you. If you want to write something custom that you can't express with this, you can do function, and so dot function, then you can do like where or select or whatever. And let's say we want to find only the ones where, for whatever reason, the label length is bigger than 3, whatever. Okay. So you can kind of eject out of that and start using like JavaScript, like filtering and stuff, JavaScript expressions. You do lose some of the incremental diffing. So you do get a bit of a performance hit because it does like a lot of the stuff in a very clever way. And I'll show, like, I don't think you guys understand how performant this is. Like, I've literally had, like, I think they say you can have up to 100,000 like items, and it should be to apply like logic in less than a second. Like, it's really, the stuff they do under the hood is really clever. I often find, if anything, I find like the filtering and the querying and stuff is trivial. Like the bottleneck is usually getting that data into memory. So that's usually, when you're working with that big data sets, it's more a question of how do you get that into memory, and like how do you get it from the server into the app in the first place. And then you can do joins and things. So I can do a join where I then say, let's put like all this, so let's do S for status, and then I can do S and X, so then I can join equal, so let's just say where X status matches the can't spell, SID. Okay, and then there might be some typos here. I'm obviously not getting any TypeScript. And let's also just then get the, let's say cat, what else did I have there? Members. So members, let's join that as well. And so let's get both the, owner. Okay, so let's say O, so that would be O and X, and equal X dot owner dot O dot ID, and join also, let's just say the person who the task is assigned to. Okay. Okay. And so what's really cool, like to me, this is almost like the original promise of something like GraphQL, is that you can write your entire query just like in a single hook. Like there's no like this thing, then that thing, then kind of like combining them together and memoizing this thing and whatever. So you'll often find that you generally, in my experience, you only have like a single query in a component to just get everything that component needs. And then you can, at the end, you can select if you want as well. So, you know, that's just if you want to project it. So let's actually do that. So X, we have S, we have O, we have A. What else have we got? Yes. Okay. and then so let's just say, so then we would say the ID would just be x.id, the label would just be x.label, the status would just be s.label. Let's say the color would be s.swatch or whatever. So the color would be based on the status color. Then what else was there? Owner. Okay. Owner dot, what is it? O dot, let's say label the name of the owner, and then you can, or no, not let's say assigned, and this would actually be A, and then you can do all other things as well. You can do like, let's say is owner, and that's just if, like let's say if A ID equals if the person that assigned to equals the ID of the owner of the task. Okay, and yeah, and then you can just like, there you go, and then you just have like this array of like all this data, and you can just map over it. And what's really cool here is, and this is what obviously you map over it, because you project it, like this will then be what you have available. Okay. And then like, let's just say for whatever reason, I'm going to show you guys. Let's say we want to change the I'm running out of space here. Let's say for whatever reason you have a button here where you, I don't know, change the, let's say the, I don't know, let's say you unassign, yeah, let's say unassign or whatever, okay? And then it says also on click. So all that you do then is you just go, okay. So let's just say at the very least, I might have some bad typos in here. So let's just say at the very least, it just gives the label for now or whatever, and then the key. Then let's just say, like there's like a button after that where if you want to like unassign, I don't know, I'm just thinking of like some random thing that you want to do here. And then, so basically all you do, there's no worrying about HTTP calls, there's no whatever, like optimistic updating, whatever. You want to click that unassigned button and poof, instantly that person should be gone. No spinners, but also you don't want to like now manage anything. You literally just go, so this would be task. What is it? Tasks, update, and I would just get the ID of the task I want to update. And it uses immer under the hood. I'm a massive fan of immer. So you can just like literally go X assigned. No, there you go. Okay, you click it, boop, it'll be instant. Okay, and so let's just say then in your collection, so obviously you want to make sure that your server kind of handles that as well. So you probably have an on update. And then you get transactions as part of this, because it does batch transactions for performance reasons. So all that I would then do is, let's say there's a specific endpoint for, let's say there's a very specific endpoint, fetch, let's just call it, because a lot of times I think this is the thing, and I think this is where Tanstack DB really shines. So there's a lot of tools like, Sean mentioned Zero and so forth. And we can talk about those in a second, but I think a lot of those require you to fully opt in or opt in both on the front end and the back end. What Tanstack DB, what makes it so amazing for me and like why it's a big game changer for me is you can opt into local first without the backend team even knowing what local first is or what you're doing. They just see that when things happen, it happens automatically. Okay, you can just use a plain REST API. Let's say, something as, I've worked on a lot of projects where, like let's say API, there's a specific endpoint that you need to hit. You don't do a patch or whatever, you just hit that endpoint to unassign. There's a specific command on the back end that unassigns people for whatever performance reasons or whatever, instead of sending the data up. And so you would go like, let's say API, and let's just say tasks, and like let's just say you have your ID or whatever in there of the task. I'm just putting this in there as an example, and then there's like unassign. Okay, so what you can do is when an update batch runs, you just obviously map over all the transactions. I think it's transactions. I'm going to make some typos now. Mutations, I think. Okay, so all the mutations associated with that transaction. Okay, so you map over them, and then you get exposed a ton of stuff. Well, actually, it's not a map; it's a for each actually. And I think one of it is you can do. I think it's original. Am I spelling correct? I don't know. Original. So if the original, and I think it's changed, or changes, I think it's changed, or it's maybe just changed, and assigned, and then, so if that is the case, then, let's just say, params, if you're using something like Zodius or whatever, or then this would just be the params ID would just be XID. Okay, and so then whenever now in the future, when you it needs to also check if it's null, for example. Okay, so you now need to check if the change assigned is null and the original assigned is not null. So in other words, if a mutation happened where it was not null and it moved to null, then just fire this in the background. Okay, so what I generally actually do is and once again, I actually haven't used Tanstack DB that much, just because it's still a bit in beta, so I don't want to roll it out too much in prod apps. But like, I've been working on projects where we've been rolling our own similar thing like this for a very long time. So all the principles are the same. In the one project that I work on, we actually have an internal library that we built that kind of does the same type of thing. And so what I usually just do is you just start with it just does an early return then, and then you just throw new error operation not supported and coding, yes. Whatever, and then you just then you I know. Then you just build it out as you kind of run things and you're writing your logic or whatever, as you do specific operations and whatever, and there isn't something to kind of manage that. You'll just get an error and then you'll just add it. So it's kind of just to ensure that everything, because you might not know upfront what are all the common things that you would do. And for example, what you can also just do is, it maybe just falls back to a regular patch. If this, then you just do a regular patch or whatever. So you check for the common cases, and then if it's not one of the these type of imperative things, then you just kind of and just pass whatever. You just pass the entire, where is it now? Original. You just pass the entire change, maybe even as the body or whatever. Okay.
Mm.
Okay, so I think, does that kind of explain, like at a very high level, kind of like how collections and live queries relate to one another?
Yeah, I think so. Does anyone have any questions at this point? I think, is this a good time to look at sync, Schalk?
Yeah, zero. Okay, so what Fritz is talking about is zero, and zero sync is kind of like, I think, the very first like really big player. So zero sync, they used to be like, geez, zero sync used to be, I wonder if they say it in here. But so I follow CTO Zero Sync. I follow him quite closely. I can't remember his name now. No, it's not. What was that quote about? What beautiful big mess, Roby, or is it Rocicorp, or what is the company? Rocicorp.
Roci, R-O-C-I.
Okay. This is really great, actually. So Convex, great, Sean. They used to be Replicache. Then I think there was something else before Replicache. Then they became Replicache, and now they're Zero. And I think because like the problem is because they were one of the very first players in the field, like they had to go back to the drawing board like 3 times and just create a completely new product from the start, because they realized kind of, and this is the thing about like kind of the space. We are kind of like at the, I would say, in terms of where we are in terms of local first. Yes, I say. So he had a quote about big, beautiful mess, or was it? Yes, here we go. What's going on? I'm just like scrolling Twitter with you guys. So he had a really great. I want to find it now because I think it's okay, but I think it's quoted here because it's such a good. Yeah. So he talks about. Oh, here's the link to the tweet. And I think this is so true. Like people ask me a lot about this. I try to do a video, and I'm too perfectionistic to publish it. So I'm going to try this format. So I think Justin and I also spoke before this, and I told him like this. I'm not going to do like a slideshow and presentation and stuff because, like, the space is it's such a nascent space, and it's so fuzzy, and things are changing so fast, and like there's a lot of the stuff that like. Stuff hasn't really settled yet, so it's very hard to give a very concise overview of local first. And I think he summarizes it by saying it's a big, beautiful, hot mess. So there's so much energy and excitement in the space, and nothing has congealed yet. So, and I think this is kind of where I'm. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I mean, there are a number of platforms operating in this space. Yeah, Zero Sync.
Yes, Electric SQL,
PowerSync.
PowerSync. So Conrad, if that is Conrad Hofmeyer, I see it's Conrad H. Like he's from PowerSync. Like they do amazing stuff. A lot of like a big part of the team is like I think a South African team.
And also, Christian is in the chat. Also posted on our Discord that he's working on a Tanstack DB integration in PowerSync.
For what? For PowerSync?
Yeah.
The official one.
Yes.
Okay.
Official.
But this is the thing about this space. Like, it's so hard to not go on all these tangents because now I want to talk about.
I know exactly.
But let me just finish this thought first. Is that I do think when it comes to local first, we are kind of like at the place we were, let's say, just when Vue.js came out. So, so there was kind of like AngularJS, which was really exciting and whatever. But then like because it was the first foray into the space, like they learned a lot of really hard lessons, and Angular 2 had to be an entire rewrite of Angular just because we made a lot of really big mistakes in our assumptions, and then like kind of React built on top of Angular in terms of introducing this concept of one-way data flow instead of kind of two-way data binding. And then kind of like Vue also kind of took some ideas from Angular and React and kind of like created something that's a bit in between. And so effectively, like I think we're kind of at that space. And we had all these memes about X days since like JavaScript framework or whatever.
Yeah.
And I think we're kind of at that space where there's just like so many players in the field at this point, and it's really exciting. And it's like there's just all this fertile ground. So if you do venture into the space, like keep that in mind. Like things change very fast, but also like I think similar to React or whatever, there is value in terms of like being an early adopter of a lot of these things from a product design perspective. I personally think like Airbnb wouldn't have been as big as they were if they weren't one of the very first like early users of React. Same with Netflix as well, because that allowed them to build a specific type of app, whereas a lot of like Airbnb competitors had your classic like PHP thing where it's like click on a thing and it loads a page. Click on a thing, adjust your slider, this price between, and loads a page. And like, cool, make a book, loads a page. Click that. And I think what they were able to do is like they were able to give you almost like a single page app, like an app-like experience where all their competitors were kind of still doing your traditional like website that you navigate with pages. And I think it's the same. Yeah. Yes, and I think it's the same with local first as well. Like it is a scary space, and like there's a lot. Yes, cool. So cool. I see the comments and I'm getting sidelined. But like I think I just want to say like I do see that Josh actually posted a bit earlier. Asking about the website, about the Western Cape education stuff. And it's interesting, Josh, I saw you posted on LinkedIn, was it yesterday, I think maybe, about like you kind of feel a bit like, like you feel like kind of AI development has kind of like taken out a lot of like the stuff that you found exciting about development, because like it's basically just prompts and everything's established, like, cool, set up a DB for me, set up React query for me, set up whatever. And I want to say like actually like this like diving into like local first is such an interesting space in terms of the type of problems and the type of thinking, because AI can't do this for you, because AI is trained on previous patterns, and there are no patterns yet. Like if anything, like you'll actually you're going to find this really like annoying is if you rely on AI too much when doing local first. It's just going to get in the way because it's going to make the stupidest suggestions because there's nothing really to go on. There isn't like this history of like REST APIs spanning like a decade that it can lean on. So this is what I find really like. I actually tend to turn off Copilot a lot when I'm actually just working on local first stuff. Yeah, so it's an exciting space, but I do think there's a lot of potential. There's a lot of potential for building products in this way in the very early days when it hasn't really been adopted just yet. Okay, now I want to quickly chat about the collections. Okay, so I did speak about this concept over here where you kind of set up your own, collection. So you can manually create your collection. And I think like this took me a while to realize, but all of this stuff, so these like RxDB, Trailbase, Electric, PowerSync that was mentioned, there are some unofficial ones as well. There's an unofficial one for Dexy. There's one for DB PG Lite. I'm actually, and maybe I'll do a follow-up talk. I'm actually working on a collection for auto merge, where I want to use like auto merchant CRDTs in Tanstack DB. But anyway, so all that these are, they're just actually factory functions that create the collection for you. They're not like plugins, or I think this is really what kind of threw me off initially. These things aren't plugins. Like you can literally go and, you know, like this is just like if you're using PowerSync, it's a factory function just sets up your collection for you with all the actual like things that you need to have it work with PowerSync. So it's literally just a factory function. You'll see here, you do create collection and you run the function and you give it like some info and it creates everything that goes into create collection for you.
Can you just zoom in a bit there?
Yes. And I think like this was something that took me like a very long time to realize. So with RxDB, you can literally, if you want to, you can just like, you know, have your own, write your own like PowerSync collection that works with PowerSync and so forth. It's just like actually, you know, it's just factory functions, quality of life stuff that just make the integration easier. And I actually think like, and this is for me the power of Tanstack is that these aren't actually plugins. Like everything when it comes down to it, like this, and I think this part here in the documentation is very deceptive because to me this is the core of it. If there's one thing you read in all this documentation, read the creating a collection options creator. And you know, like so effectively when you do the PowerSync one, that when you use that factory function, like this is literally like all the stuff that it like configures the collection with, you know. So you let me just see if I can find some examples, you know. So well, let's actually just do one ourselves super quickly. Ah, geez, I'm running out of time. I need to go put the kids to bed, but let me maybe show you super quickly here. I just want to show you like honestly, so in this example that I made, I used the query collection one, which kind of integrates it with Tanstack query, and I kind of regret that a bit actually. I do actually think I actually don't think there's that much value in terms of. I think this is just like if you like the Tanstack query like abstraction and whatever, then maybe use this. But so effectively, you know, you just do the thing where you do the keys and you have your client and whatever. So you're kind of putting a big query on top of your collection that keeps it in sync. But I actually I'm probably going to rewrite some of this code, and then I'm probably just going to create my own collection by hand. So just to quickly show you, so at Tanstack DB, so create collection. So let's just say, you know, let's just do an example one here for status. Okay, so export, or let's just do const, and let's just do status collection. See, here already it starts going off the rails. Like this is, I don't know what it's doing here. Like it's just guessing. So I might actually, let me actually turn off, like, yeah, like with this type of thing, it actually becomes annoying. Okay, cool. So get key, so XID, so this is the unique identifier for it. The schema for a status, I can just, it accepts any like standard schema stuff, so Zod, Valibot, all of that stuff. Then you can add some utilities to your collection if you want to do common things like, oh, you want to see how many, let's say you want some utility that tells you like how many of a specific tasks are there of a specific status or whatever. So you can add utilities. Then you can do like garbage collection time, and then like these like on delete. So you can kind of set side effects. So this is what, like when you delete something, what side effect, probably sending something up to the server or so forth. Single start sync mode, just whether it immediately starts syncing. Then sync mode, this one is really important, and I maybe want to touch on this, is that there's there's 3 sync modes. I think 2 of them are available just at the moment. I think the third one they're still working on, which is progressive. But so eager is just like, it assumes that when, okay, so you provide it with a sync, provided with like a sync function, okay, your collection. And you know, this can be anything. It can like be from index DB. This can be from like fetch, whatever. If your sync mode is yes, if your sync mode. So once again, as I said, like if I'm pulling in, so I already have it installed here, but this can be like power sync or it can be anything. But whereas I use the query collection one. So if I do the query collection, all of this is just a factory function to create all of this logic for me. So I would just actually, you know, run that, and then you see I have some other things I can pass here now, like enabled, you know, query client, query function, and so forth. So it then just constructs this low-level stuff for me. But so okay, if it's eager, then whatever gets returned replaces the entire collection. So that is like, so whatever you're hitting is going to give you the full collection. So this is really cool for stuff like statuses or whatever, where you're probably only going to have 10 or like members or whatever. So this is where you can hit an endpoint and you have all, you're not working with thousands and thousands of things. You can get everything at once. So whatever you get, so if I return an empty array, it's going to wipe my collection on sync. Okay. Then the other one is on demand, and on demand is really cool because then it's like how do I explain this? You incrementally load stuff. So you like, this is like if you have thousands. So here's a good example. We're not in Palmetrics. We aren't using Tanstack query. Like kind of, we have our own thing that we rolled. So for example, with the products, like, let me just zoom out. You don't see too much of the details. And just oh, it's because it's set. I was like, why is it showing it as cards? Okay. So there's a lot of stuff. Like you can, you know, like look at all the stuff you can decide to show. So, you know, like I want my offers on Amazon, and I want my department on Takealot, and you know, so like this is like big data sets. So like kind of you have 2 problems here, where it's either like this is 20 different API calls. You're just sending on like every pagination, you're sending like 30 API calls, or it's one fat one, and you like just takes forever to download everything. You'll see, okay, this is actually not a lot. This is 136, but you know, like a lot of like clients and stuff have like thousands and thousands of products. And so what we also do is we use virtualization. So you'll see as I scroll down, you know, it loads it incrementally. Okay. And so this is what on-demand effectively does, is it it loads subsets of the data, and it's actually able to very cleverly keep track of what subsets you have already. So let me show you an example. So let's say in here, let me just do, so you do a, you know, like before the select, let's say you do a offset 0, and you do a limit. Let's say you're doing some type of pagination, okay? Then it is smart enough to know what is captured by the subset. So if I now go and I change the limit to 30, then it's not going to send a new request up to the server, because what I have already would fall with this subset is already captured in terms of the stuff I've requested. Or if I go, I want to find everything that is, you know, where let's say it's a logged in user, but let's but only where there is a, I can't think of a good example now, but so if I were to do this, then it knows, okay, like this falls outside of the subsets it already has. So it's very cleverly able to figure out what it still needs to fetch. And so like you do that by means of, I think there is a, well, let me just show you. Okay. I probably need to start ending this off. I need to go put the kids to bed. We might do a part 2, but let me just...
Yes, I was going to suggest exactly that, because I still have lots of questions I would ask.
Exactly. Yeah, it's
Next
so,
time.
like I said, it's a beautiful, big, hot mess. Like, you can't cover all of it. So let me just quickly run this. Okay. So effectively, so what I have is I have categories, collection, I have members, status, tasks, teams, whatever. And then I just have my classic like session. So log in and log out. And then I have like this fat, like seeded database that I created. Like, look at this big JSON file. Okay. It's like almost 500,000 lines. Okay. But then I just slice this to emulate like API calls. So I just have like this big, I don't want to spin up a server specifically for this, but then I just have like this API where I have like mock calls that you can do, and it just like slices this in different ways. And so for teams, okay, so let me show you quickly. Right, so first things first, okay, if you're logged out, then obviously you need to log in. Okay, so John, okay, so let's just say John at example. So that's going to be an invalid password. Let's see. Yeah. And I think I just hard coded it to be password 1, and then it's going to log me in. Okay. Cool. And you'll see this loaded immediately. This was available immediately, and that is because if I refresh, okay. The delay you see is not actually because of the data loading. The delay you see is the loading of that big JSON file into this actual API file. I literally just, where is it? I literally just imported server. Yeah, so this is the actual delay. So don't be deceived. Like, it's actually like this delay is just like that blocking the actual JavaScript thread. But so for all purposes, you see it's still syncing actually. But it's already just showing the previous stuff that I had. And I can, click around and whatever. And so I would imagine these would be the teams that you have access to. And so what I'm doing is I'm just like polling, let's say every 5, what is this? This is every 5 seconds, every 5 minutes. Then it's just polling. And if I'm pushing up like changes, then like it never polls while I'm pushing up. And then I just have like the on delete here, and then I have the on insert and the on update. And so the teams I just poll like all the time. So it just uses this, where is it? Like get teams. So I just have this endpoint that just return an array of all the teams. So this is, you'll see that it's syncing. I think this is because I refocused my browser window. Okay. And so if we were to go, for example, in here, okay, it's syncing. I haven't clicked on this one before. So it's loading all of this fresh now. Cool. And then, oh, geez, okay. I was working on this and I broke it. But I had some cool stuff here where it kind of like showed icons and stuff. But check this out. Like, this is like, once again, this is a 500,000 line JSON file. Look at this. If I do the search, look at that. It's basically instant. And that's because it's able to very cleverly, if you look at the look at, so this is the query here. I have like all my joins. This is very similar to the one I illustrated earlier. It's very cleverly, it's able to actually organize this in a way in which it's able to only modify where it only recalculates the little bit that it needs. It doesn't do everything again. So it's really, really fast. Okay, but yeah, so effectively this is very similar to what I showed there, and then obviously I just get the name of the company here, and then if I reload as well, there's a bit of a delay, but that is just because of that big JSON file loading in, or I might have broken it. No, I think I broke it. You see, this thing is all messed up. I've been playing around with it a bit, but let me just see. So I did explain the key. Like this is very similar to the example I showed. Is there anything else that's worth touching on? Types, here's just all my types. Cache. I just have one. Okay, so this is the thing as well. Like if you're not doing offline first, if you're just doing this, okay, yeah, this worked now. So it's able to, I also get the colors and stuff. I think the cache might have been messed up or something, I don't know. But like what we tend to do, and we do this at Palmetrics as well, is if you're just doing local first for, and I guess I didn't even touch on this, but to me, like the main appeal of local first for me is simplicity. And you're front loading a lot of complexity in terms of your architecture, but your actual implementation of code and your logic gets really simple. Like as I mentioned, like look at this. I just write this, data rows. So data, okay, so say teams collections. So this is just the ID from the URL. Just get that matching team, find one, and here it is. Okay. Yeah, I have like from this, where this, then this, join this, join that, join this, do the select, offset this, whatever. So there's no managing like 50,000 React queries and HTTP calls and use states, and it's infinitely re-rendering, and there's like a infinite re-render happening or whatever. So you pay a cost up front in terms of your architecture, just setting this up. But then for the remainder of your project, like effectively anyone working on your project doesn't have to know anything about where this data comes from. I just want these collections. I just want this. Yeah. So, you obviously get static typing. So if I were to go where, team, category, whatever. So if I were to go, let's say, updated, obviously it knows this is a number, so you can't use equal, or like this is a string. So let's say, let's pull something and say greater than or equal to GTE, and let's say 10 or whatever, So I think that's about it. Is there anything? So obviously, so like I'm mostly doing this type of work in the projects that I work for, not because we're trying to build an offline app, but like having a lot of that locally, like simplifies your debugging, simplifies, like makes it like super easy to write code, roll out new features, reason about your code, whatever. And it kind of like you just like all this complexity around like around HTTP requests and async state and waiting for responses and whatever. All that complexity you just drop on the floor. You don't have to deal with any of that. But so in that case, like it's nice to just like have a key where you can just like flush the entire cache. Like let's say I'm making a big change and I'm changing, like obviously I'm removing icon from here, or I'm renaming this to picture, whatever. So in a traditional DB, or if you're going fully offline, now you need to start thinking about migration paths. How do we now migrate all this cache data to the new schema and whatever? And if you're just doing like local first and not offline first, then I just generate a new UUID for the cache. And then it just like flushes every time when it loads, when the user loads the page again. It just busts, everything gets rid of everything that's cached and just starts a fresh cache again. Because so it's just because so if I were to, where's the helpers? So we just prepend our store names with the cache name. So it just wipes all those stores. So this is just, I'm using IDB key val, which is just like a very simple IndexedDB key value thing. Okay, there's a ton I still wanted to cover, but I unfortunately need to go. We're already past an hour and a half.
All good, Schalk. Thanks so much. That was really great. I think we should definitely do a follow-up. I mean, I still have lots of things lots of questions, around things like how do we get into persisting auth across devices? What's the source of truth? What are methodologies for all that kind of thing?
Quickly around that.
And then CDR, was it CDRTs?
CRDTs.
CRDTs, I always get that wrong. I mean, there's lots to discuss there.
Yeah, so just around the kind of the auth thing is, so I was mentioning, but then once again, I got distracted again. So SQLite is by, I think it's Carl Matthews. I think he's the guy behind, he was the creator of Gatsby JS before Netlify.
Carl Matthews, yes.
Yeah, before, so he's the founder of Lightning. No, I'm getting confused. What did I say? I said SQLite, I think, but that's something else. What is it? Is it Lightning SQL?
Electric SQL. Electric SQL.
And he actually, like, you can check, like, he has a lot of writing there in terms of auth, and that auth is actually a non-issue once you get down to the implications. Like, you just sync what you have access to. The server is responsible for syncing and controlling what you can access, and that's it. Like, effectively, the main thing. Oh, and I didn't even touch on this, but like from an actual server perspective, like this, like your server is like this thing. Your server just syncs the data. So you don't spend any of the time writing SQL queries, creating endpoints, whatever. You have like an endpoint per collection, and it just syncs it, and you handle all the querying, whatever. Like, yeah, like, so we didn't even touch on this, but you just get rid of like a lot of like backend complexity. But anyway, yeah. So there are a lot of answers to that. I would actually recommend you guys check out Electric. Obviously. PowerSync, I know the team there, Conrad as well, has written like some really great like blogs in terms of local first and so forth.
Yeah, definitely check out PowerSync.
RxDB, they also have some really Linear has some amazing. So Linear, the actual
LINEA.
Yeah, the task management thing, like their product is just an engineering masterpiece. It's completely like local first and whatever, and they kind of talk about a lot of how they've built it and so forth. What else is worth checking out as well? I can't think.
You mentioned AutoMerge, Schalk.
AutoMerge, yes, AutoMerge. So AutoMerge, is what came out of that research paper. So they built AutoMerge based on the findings in the research paper. And hopefully, when I do part 2, I already have an unofficial AutoMerge plugin for Tanstack DB.
Excellent.
Yeah.
There's also YJS, which I know handles Figma live collaboration.
Yes, YJS.
So there's a massive use case there. Yeah.
Convex as well. So Sean also
Convex.
mentioned. Yeah. So this is even something we haven't even touched on. Is like there's a ton of like sync engine solution, off-the-shelf sync in solutions where you actually, it's everything. Your entire stack is covered by this thing. So Convex, you don't need to know anything. You don't touch a HTTP request. Everything is abstracted away. You just subscribe to stuff, but it does all of this like merging and like syncing and collections and querying, all of this stuff. This under the hood, but obviously you pay for it. But
yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Great.
All right. Okay.
Thanks everyone. Thanks for joining. Please join the Discord. I'm popping the link in now, and we will announce we'll announce the JetBrains giveaway in the general channel there. So please join that.
Yeah.
And
I'm
thanks again,
Sean, but I'm also saying it's not going to be not Sean.
Yeah. No comment.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah. Thanks, Schalk. Great. Always a pleasure. And yeah, we'll come back with another one. Yeah. Thanks everyone for joining.
All right. Okay.
Cheers all.
Cheers, guys. Bye.